Good morning. We are at Seven Springs Farm with Elizabeth Turkette, and we're here to pick up my fertilizer for the garden. I got a detailed response from Adam Bressa about what I need to add to the soil, and I called Seven Springs, spoke with Eric a couple days ago and placed my order. I prepaid over the phone, and Seven Springs is being very careful with our new social distancing guidelines. And so I asked Elizabeth if she'd tell us how they're operating these days. So go ahead and tell our viewers what's happening out here.
All right. So we are still open for business to accept retail customers to come pick up your soil amendments, fertilizers, and organic pesticides and herbicides if you need them. We are, however, asking that you call ahead and prepay over the phone. We'll send you an email receipt so there's no contact.
So it seems to me that just everybody who may have a small garden plot or a giant garden plot, and maybe it's been fallow for many years, is suddenly like, let's go do this.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. We ship all over the country and even to different countries sometimes. And there's definitely been a very large influx in orders. There's no telling for sure what that's from, but from my phone calls that I'm taking, it's a lot of small home gardeners just saying, now's the time, I might as well grow food. Even myself and my partner, Jake, we have a very small little area where there's a possibility to grow, but we just went ahead and said, to heck with it, let's do it, because we're not going anywhere anytime soon, and now's the time to grow food and be self-sustainable if you can.
I so agree. It's something to do. It's something exciting to watch and see grow. And in Floyd, especially, we are so fortunate to have Seven Springs right down the road, because I was trying to order online, and then I realized I couldn't do a pickup order that way.
That's another thing. Yeah. Do not place your order online. It will calculate shipping. We have no option to order pickups online for a few reasons. One, like I said, being that we don't have the warehouse space to stage all of the orders. And so we have to be able to control the amount of orders that come in. So if you try to place your order online, it will calculate shipping and charge you for that.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to refund it, and it's a whole process. So just give us a call.
That's what happened to me. I was at that point, and I stopped and I called, and then Eric was like, yeah, we had to do that because people in other places were choosing pickup, even though they might be in Canada or something. So we are fortunate to be close by because it saved probably $60. I mean, fertilizer is heavy. Mm-hmm. So to be able to drive out here myself and pick it up is wonderful. And we appreciate that you're still welcoming us local folks to come out and pick up our small orders.
Yeah, our community is how this place got started 30 years ago, so we're not going to stop anytime soon. We have completely separated our operations, so typically there's 5 of us in the small cabin, and it's just me in there now. So that being said, phone calls are coming in at a high rate. So if you do have to leave a message, we will get back to you. It might take some time, but just be patient with us because our staffing situation is not quite the same as what it was a few months ago.
Yes, everybody is adapting. Well, thanks so much for chatting with us. And so I guess we'll drive up to the warehouse and pick up our fertilizer. And so can you tell us, give us the website address and your phone number for folks to reach you?
Yep. Our website is www.7springs with an S on the end, farm.com. And you can reach us at 540-651-3228.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just had a nice morning visit out at Delaney's and talked with Sarah out there and bought a couple perennials. These are lupines and some basil just because I couldn't wait to have basil growing. Apparently I'm jumping the gun a little bit. You can learn more about what they're up to over at Delaney's, and they're up to a lot of good stuff in the Delaney's episode of In My Garden. But today we are here in my garden, so welcome. Got lots of goodies in here today. I also got to stop by Seven Springs and pick up the fertilizer, and we're going to apply that to the soil today. And I'm super excited to see how this changes things in my garden. Whew. Well, Floyd Fitness is closed, but still getting my exercise. All right, so I've been corresponding, as you know, with Adam about the recommendations for fertilizing the garden based on the soil reports. And I got an exact recommendation from him, and I went ahead, as you saw, and bought my fertilizer. And so we are going to follow his recommendation of 0.35 pounds of Harmony per 10 square feet and 0.12 pounds of feather meal, and that's also per 10 square feet. And that will help me hit the nitrogen. That's the most important part, and to not overdo it on potassium and phosphorus. I'm also going to add 0.06 pounds per square feet of gypsum, and that will help for readily available calcium. And this is all brand new to me. It's the first time I'm going to be adding this much fertilizer and amendments to my soil, so I'm very excited to see if this makes a difference in my yields this year. So go ahead and give this a shot. Got my scale. It's just my kitchen scale, and I'm going to tear out the weight of the yogurt cup here, so that's basically zeroing it out with this on, so I'm not weighing the cup. And now I have no idea to start with what that will look like. So we're going for 5.6 ounces. Once I get a basic amount on this, I'm just going to mark this cup. I don't feel like I need to measure it exact, but we're going to try and get close. 5.6. Harmony is a overall fertilizer that has where is it? It says on the bag the amounts. It's 543, which let me turn it so we can see it. So the amount of total nitrogen is 5%, phosphate is 4%, and potash is 3%. And it's got calcium in it as well, 9% calcium. So this is a nice overall fertilizer for boosting up the nitrogen. It also is released over time, so it's going to continue to help the garden throughout the season. But the main reason we were recommended to use this is for the nitrogen. My soil really needs nitrogen. And so we're doing 5.6 ounces for every 10 square feet. So that's not much. I mean, that's not a lot of area. So we're going to be putting a lot of this in the garden. And I'm just looking here to see where it's at. Okay. Right there. All right. And then about 10 square feet would be this area here. And so it's going to get rained in, and these pellets will kind of slowly release over the next month or so and give that nutrients to the soil. So I've got to do that over the whole garden. So see if I can eyeball it, if I can start trusting myself without weighing it. Hey, not bad. Just a little over. All right. Now, this area here. And that's just this first fertilizer. We also have 2 more bags to spread over the whole garden. So I'll be doing this for the next few days. I figure that's close enough, 5.9 ounces. And I was remembering that I measured this bed, and rather than running to get my tape measure, I'm going to find that. And so it's about 5 feet. So it's like 5 times 2 would be 10 square feet. So it's like I'm going to be going across this bed every 2 feet. 1, 2. So from like here to there is getting this cup. That's quite a lot. I've never put that much down. So as you can see, I've got my work cut out for me this week. I've got to spread that, measure and spread that for 3 different products on this whole garden. So I'll film myself doing that so you can see. This gypsum will be the second thing I add. And the main purpose for that is to get calcium in the soil. You can see that it's got a couple different forms of calcium, quite a bit, 64% and 20%. It's pelletized gypsum. So that will go down, and that would be 0.6 pounds per 10 square feet. And then here is something called feather meal, and which is basically decomposed or composted chicken feathers. And the reason we went with this is because it is purely nitrogen. Of course, it's going to have a few other types of things in it, but the main thing in here is nitrogen, and we're not going to have the potassium and phosphorus. So apparently that you can get too much of that in your soil. So Adam recommended this so that we don't get into that problem. So we'll see how this goes. Where'd I stop? Right here. That's the hard part, is remembering where you were. Okay. My potato bed. I did go over to my mom's this week and plant potatoes over there too, quite a bit more than I put here, but I couldn't resist putting a few in my own garden. There's nothing quite like walking out to the garden and digging up a bucket full of potatoes, new potatoes, and cooking them. So what I did was I like to trench my potatoes. There's lots of different ways people do it. But I dig down pretty good, trench here and another trench here. And this soil has nothing in it. So the potatoes are here in the lower part. And I just barely covered them with soil. And then at the end, I sprinkled some leaves on top. And I'm going to watch for the leaves to emerge and then cover them up as they grow so that you make sure you keep the potatoes covered so they don't get any light on them, because if they get light on them, they'll turn green and that can actually be toxic. So, and also it just helps them to produce more. So only keeping about, this much of the plant out until, of course, I can't hill them up anymore. So basically you've got this trench in the middle, but it ends up being 2 hills at the end of the season. So I've been working on keeping these beds covered, and I'm doing all right with that. Mowing the grass and dumping it on the bed is working out pretty well. You can see that this is still green underneath. It's dry on top, but it's still decomposing here. And I was taught that it's important to let it completely decompose before you introduce plants there. So I'm just kind of letting that dry out. But this week I mulched up the leaves that I collected from Joy's house and spread them over the garden beds. And that's a dirty, dusty job, but I think it's really going to pay off. As I peek under the soil, it's just rich and soft. And we just had a really good rain, of course, so it just feels perfect under here. I was out at Delaney's, as you know, and Sarah was talking about how excited gardeners get to get the season started. And when you get that feeling, it's a good way to kind of get yourself out there and not plant anything that's going to get killed by a late frost, is just to focus on covering your soil and just getting yourself really in a good position for the best season you've ever had. So that, maybe getting your soil tested or getting some fertilizer that is recommended to you, or just covering with leaves. Those are all very time-consuming things, and they still get you out there in the garden. I actually took the time to take the leaves and spread them around all of the onions. And onions don't compete well, which means that if a lot of weeds come around here, they really struggle. And so, keeping the leaves down here is helping to keep the moisture in the soil, for one, but it's also going to keep those weeds from having as good of a chance at growing. So it took a lot of time to spread, the leaves carefully around these onions, but I'm really happy that I did it. And it's also really pretty to look at. It looks a lot nicer than a dried out, cakey bed of clay. And down here, I did the same thing with the cilantro transplants. I carefully spread the leaves around these little babies. And so far, so good here. So I've got still more to do here. It's more challenge. It's actually much better to put the leaves down before you've got anything growing. It's a lot easier because you can just dump them. I had a bunch of these sunflowers already planted, as you saw last week. So I did have to carefully spread the leaves around these as well. I kind of jumped the season with the sunflowers. There's no doubt about it. But they seem to be doing okay. So we'll see. So far, so good with those. And I remembered those flowers are called larkspurs. They come out with a nice purple flower. And these are the wild flowers that we planted. And so far, so good. And this is the bed I've been struggling with here. So far, it looks like we're just going to have beets in here and some radishes. The spinach seeds just aren't coming up. And I know it's a hard plant to grow from seed. I've known that. So, but these are all radishes in here, so they're gonna have a few of those anyway. And I'm going to plant beans this week if I get all of this fertilizer put down. It still is early. We can still have frost up until May 10th or even later. But I feel okay to put seeds in for beans because it's going to take them a bit to emerge, and then at that point we might be past the frost. It's just hard to wait. But it's totally safe to put your lettuces and your spinach and your onions and your broccoli and your cabbage and your potatoes, your peas. Go for it. So my quest to spread sunflowers across the whole hillside continues. And today I planted 13 of them right along this fence. And I think in another couple of weeks, I'll do a row just below it and then a row below that, and hopefully keep it going so that we have a continual bloom throughout the season. So while we were out at Delaney's, I went there with the intention of buying all sorts of plants, and actually Sarah kind of talked me out of it. She might not realize that, but it's just too early. And so I decided to go with a couple perennials. And I've always wanted to have lupines in my yard. And so I'm going to put one on each side of the posts here, and hopefully they will do well and provide lots of flowers. And then I got some basil just because I like basil. So it's definitely time to transplant the peppers. So I'm going to be doing that today. They're under lights, and I leave the lights on all day, and so they get this dark color on their leaves. And I've seen that in years past, and it's concerned me, but it turns out it doesn't really affect them later. So I'm not worried about that. What I am a little concerned about is that their taproots are shooting out the bottom quite a bit. So I'm going to have to be really careful when I take them out to not disturb their root system too much. But this speedling tray really helps them release easy. So it shouldn't be too big of a problem. But those are some deep roots already. So get those in bigger pots. But they, of course, won't go out until early June. So they've got another month to be inside. So already it's getting close to time to say goodbye to the lilacs, which is very sad. They actually got hit by the freeze earlier this week, and they're kind of turning brown, and they still smell amazing. They're still beautiful, but you can tell in a week or two there's not going to be any more lilacs, and we'll just have to move on to something else, as we do in the garden. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.